friends at Tivoli Brewing Company and the Department of Communication Arts and Sciences at MSU Denver, this is Unfiltered. And here are your hosts, Jay Schrader and Dr. Samuel J.
So yeah, he would have been like 17.
Oh my gosh. Jay, where are we?
I don't have a mic.
Oh yeah.
We're at Living the... We're experiencing some technical difficulties
get that
today.
close to it. Yeah, no.
Living the Dream in beautiful... Is this Highlands Ranch technically?
Technically
Or
it's
still Littleton, yeah. Living the Dream Brewing in Highlands Ranch. Brewing Company, excuse me.
Jason, what's the address?
12305 Dumont Way, Littleton, Colorado.
So when you opened this place, oh, cheers by the way.
Yeah.
Cheers, yeah.
Cheers.
Thank you very much. No, thank you for having us. So I guess let's walk back a little bit. I mean, this is a logo that I suppose that I've seen several times in a liquor store and all of that. So on this podcast, we tend to meander around a little bit. When you opened it up, did you know you were going to distribute?
Yes. Okay. That was always kind of the plan. I came out of liquor retail in the Chicago area. So I ran stores there for then the two biggest players, and one still is. And
so who were they?
I worked for Sam's Wines and Spirits.
Okay.
And then when Sam started to dissolve, I jumped over to Benny's Beverage Depot, and still friends with them, a lot of those guys. And
Hear a lot of I used to hear Joe Madden commercials from Benny's.
Yeah,
Beverage.
big sports. That they figured out Chicago sports was their best marketing play, for sure. Cubs, big Blackhawks, and some with the Sox and Bulls, but mostly.
That's not something we've talked about too much. These shitty mics. Yeah, I know, dude. I'm used to having the big foam thing in my face. I love it now, and it's this size does matter, they say. We haven't really addressed a lot of sports culture related to beer, frankly. I mean, we talked with Eno, but beyond that, I mean, I'm sure there's got to be something here. Living the Dream, I look at your logo and I see a home plate, frankly. So
it's funny, the design, the logo was actually done by a designer in Chicago, and lo and behold, it started to look a lot like Sports Authority Field's logo.
I do see that. Yeah.
Luckily, that isn't a problem anymore. So
you ran him out of business.
Yeah, that's people are drinking here instead of buying sporting goods, I guess.
So as a kid from Iowa, who went to Iowa with a bunch of buddies who are from the burbs of Chicago, where did you grow up?
I grew up in West Des Moines, Iowa.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's home to me.
Okay. So how did you get to Chicago?
Well, I was born there, and then we moved when I was very young. But when I finished a degree at Iowa State University.
How did I not? Well, I guess it's unfiltered for a reason. We don't do research.
Yeah, we don't do a lot of research.
So, yeah.
That makes you and Kevin DeLange, the Iowa State grads.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then I was in the restaurant business at that point. I really thought that's what I was going to do, is open a restaurant. And started working. I moved all over. I lived in, I moved to St. Louis. From St. Louis, I moved to Memphis. Then I was in Orlando for a while, Austin, Texas, Louisville, Kentucky, Cincinnati, Ohio, and then moved here. Then to Chicago for 10 years, and then moved here. And that was from 1998.
So as a transient Midwesterner, talking with at least one local born and raised Denverite, you're just a transient. What attracted you to Denver specifically? Was it work? Did you have a job transfer, or were you setting your sights on, I'm going to open a brewery, I'm going to do it in Denver?
That's exactly it.
Really?
Growing up, our family vacation was coming out here every year to ski since I was about 4.
Okay.
Just fell in love with the mountains, and all those places I moved, none of them were by choice.
So you finally got to use your own brain and think about where you wanted to go?
Exactly, and it was a little bit too, the culture here with beer is such that I kind of felt like if we could do it here, you know, you can do it anywhere kind of thing. And they're just, it's so ingrained in the Colorado culture that it, you know, now it's pretty ingrained everywhere. But when I first started figuring this whole thing out, you know, I didn't see a better place to do it. And so it took me about 3 or 4 years to talk my wife into it. But we did, you know, and then we also timed it. Teddy, who you met, was just starting high school. So we wanted to, where it's like, we either got to do it now or it's going to be another 4 years, because we didn't want to move him in the middle of high school. So that's what we did.
That's pretty awesome.
So, yep, I spent a year full-time here working on, I had started the business plan already, and then spent another year here full-time working on it. And then started trying to raise money and found this place.
What were you doing to support yourself in that year while you were here in Denver without a brewery?
Off my wonderful wife.
Yeah, we all have one of those.
Yeah.
Is she here today that we can give her a shout out to?
She's not here.
All right.
She's actually in the wine industry. She's in sales management for wine for a distributor here. So we tend to have good parties.
Yeah, no shit. When's the next one? When's the Christmas party?
That's right.
We probably missed it. It was Saturday.
So I've got to ask, do you still follow the Cyclones?
Mm-hmm.
You do. So congrats on your bowl game.
Thank you.
Saw a really good tweet the other day about all the great things that Iowa State's done, and somebody responded, except beat Iowa. So
yeah. We tend to peak later in the year.
Okay.
We'll see. Tomorrow night's basketball, so we'll see.
Oh, shit. If we were smart and I would have done my research, we could have recorded tomorrow night in the middle of the game.
We're not smart.
That would have been a lot of fun. So we recorded with Kevin during the Iowa State football game.
Okay.
Down at Freshcraft.
Nice.
It's an Iowa bar.
Yep.
He was very welcome. He brought a keg, in fact. Yeah, put it
Not
on
for
tap.
us.
No. He put it on tap. So next year we should do something and come back to it.
No, we've hosted a couple of game watches down here, you know, and I've done a little bit of work with the Alumni Association, and the two we kind of do that with, at least for me. I went to Iowa State, and then my wife is from London.
Okay.
So English football. We've done some game watches. Unfortunately, our team is the biggest rival to probably the most popular team in Denver. So see if you can figure that one out.
The Salt Lake Real? Well, the Arsenal.
Yeah.
Your team is Arsenal. That's okay.
No, we're not Arsenal.
You're rivals of Arsenal, so you're Manchester United or
Tottenham Hotspur.
Tottenham. All right. Okay.
So, yeah,
Which-
better than red.
I like it.
This is really...
So we hosted about, I think it was about 40 people here for the Champions League final this year when it was Spurs against Liverpool. So.
I've never thought I would say this, but I might have a new favorite brewery that plays soccer games.
So we don't do it every week, but
Well, there's a problem.
they start at like 5 in the morning.
Yeah.
That's not a problem. That's not a good argument.
You guys still have beer, right?
Yeah.
You guys still have beer. You just leave me a key. Let me ask you guys this. Maybe one or the other, is the Iowa State soccer rivalry that big of a deal, or is there even one?
There isn't one.
Yeah, it's like two intramural teams, maybe.
They have a real team. I just don't know if I don't even know if they play each other.
Huh.
What do you look at?
No, I know it's crazy.
This is bad.
Our
Okay.
jib, huh?
Our jib, yes. Okay, so Jason, at what point, I suppose, in your career and your wife's background, did you two decide to give this thing a run? Was it being in Chicago? Was it being in food and beverage? What was it that made you think that you could start a brewery and you knew what to do?
It was honestly all of the above. When I was, I went from restaurants and I actually went from cooking in restaurants to managing out front, and took over like a lot of wine and bar management. I'm still really into wine, almost as much as beer, at least in the study and drinking. But
Fair enough.
And then I was got really just burned out of the restaurant hours. I mean, not so much the length. I've always worked long hours, but the time. Getting home at 3 a.m. got married, have a family, can't do that anymore. So that's when I transitioned into retail. Became a general manager for Sam's Wines and Spirits, and that's where I kind of really got into craft beer, because that was really about when it was starting to, like the first store I ran was the first time Fat Tire was sold legally east of Mississippi.
Wow.
So I remember those days, and it was all bombers, single bombers, and for about 3 months it was our best-selling product in the store.
And I'm not familiar with the store, but it's a Chicago area store, is that right?
So for many years, Sam's Wines and Spirits was around for 50, 60 years.
Oh, wow.
And it started as Sam's Cut Rate Liquors downtown, and then became Sam's Wines. Their main store in downtown Chicago for at least 10 years was the busiest liquor store in the world.
Wow.
They were doing 50, 60, 70 million out of one location.
That's insane.
It was nuts. I remember when I was there, just in wine staff, there was 36.
What?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
You would have, it was just where you went. It was a destination. And then they started to expand, and I opened a store in the northern suburbs of Chicago for them. But like many family businesses, it was on the third generation, and there was two brothers, and it's actually a fairly well-known story in the industry about their divergence, and it kind of sunk the business. And at the same time, where they focused on this really big store and like two others, you had Benny's Beverage Depot in Chicago, which was more neighborhoods but had a lot more stores. And I jumped ship when I saw where it was going to Benny's and worked with them. And then about a year into it, Sam's filed bankruptcy and Benny's took it over.
Oh, bottom out.
And I ended up running an old Sam's location as Benny's because I knew the systems and the people. Now Benny's is up to, in Illinois, I think they have 38 stores.
Wow. That's
something like that.
It's a totally different culture when it comes to liquor stores. I've been through the airport in Chicago twice maybe, but I don't know shit about the liquor stores. But the reason I ask about the stores and being in Chicago specifically is curious how Goose Island, you mentioned New Belgium. You were there when it was the first time you could sell it east of the Mississippi. Yep. But what kind of impact did Goose Island have on you as a retail type establishment?
Pretty hefty, and I was there when they got bought by Anheuser-Busch,
which is a big sore spot in my mind. So
it was. It also, like the main Sam's store I was talking about, the really big one. Across the street was basically the original Goose Island brew pub.
Oh wow!
It wasn't the Fulton Street Brewery, but it was the pub. So there's a lot of 2 beer lunches, but
sure, I have a lot of those.
Yeah, but
3 beer, 4 beer.
I tell you, I was there, and I actually went and visited the Goose Island main brewery after the buyout, and it didn't change a lot, other than they weren't brewing the core stuff. That actually all moved to Fort Collins.
So, just I don't want to cut you off, but I went to Revolution 2 weeks ago and met with the guys there.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the consensus, is that it hasn't been terrible. The AB buyout has not been terrible. They've been able to actually experiment and actually put good beer on tap that people want to come drink.
From a local perspective, I imagine. From a local perspective, not from a distribution and the quality of the beer. The taste
I've always
not always the same.
Felt like the big beer influence on craft is more detrimental in distribution than it is in buying. To me, buying breweries just it justifies our industry. It kind of shows that it's here to stay. Because originally, I think a lot of the big three we'll stamp out craft. Okay. We'll just make it go away, and then they realized you can't beat it, so they joined it.
Okay.
And now even in Chicago, as big as Revolution is, the big player there now is Lagunitas.
Yeah.
That brewery, when it opened, had more capacity than every brewery in Chicago combined. And now that's Heineken.
Crazy.
But it's just part of it, and I draw a lot. What I think happened in the wine industry 30, 40 years ago, it was all kind of jug cheap conglomerate wine, and instead of craft, they called it boutique, and it was all these family wineries, and it just totally changed the industry. And I think craft is doing the same thing. The only difference is, wineries didn't grow at the rate that breweries have because they're so agricultural dependent. And it's getting crowded. There's no question for us and everybody. We're in a maturing business now, and I think the biggest thing is now it's a business. It used to be just kind of like a free for all
or a hobby.
Yeah, and you could brew beer, and it really didn't even matter if it was that good.
Did you think about that, like having that perspective coming into this and choosing this location? I mean, we hear stories, right? I mean, John Sykes just ran a story this morning about all the places who have left Rhino and all of that. But down here, are you protected from rising rents to the point where no? Okay.
I mean, rents just go up everywhere. I mean, that's a big problem. But for me, the protection was diversification, and I mean that in that we always had a plan to distribute.
Okay.
Which kind of goes against a lot of what's being said right now that bring it back hyper local, but I think it rolls down to one of the things that I saw working in retail. For such a powerhouse player in retail and beer, we had 1,400 beer SKUs, something like that. One of the things we've always tried to do is, I really feel like the market can be divided into two groups. One is the hardcore beer fanatic, which everyone here is one, and they're looking for the latest releases, the haziest IPAs and the biggest stouts and all that stuff. And they're the most vocal. They're the ones big on social media. They're the ones big, on all that kind of thing. But I think they're actually a pretty small part of the market. And being down here in the suburbs, one of the things that I wanted to focus on too was just making beer that people can enjoy. And with my food background and just where I came from, like one of the things we don't use any flavor extracts. We only use real fruits. We only use real product in the beers. And on the same token, we're just not going to be that brewery that's putting, donuts and Captain Crunch in beers. That's not my thing. Everything to me has to have some kind of philosophy behind it. And so we've tried to just, especially being so far from downtown and Rhino and North, we can't live off of extreme stouts and extreme IPAs. So we came out with Powder Run and our light lager, and we wanted to make some beers that you can just enjoy. You can know you'll get on a tap list and you'll enjoy it. And we wanted to be a full spectrum brewery that distributes and can appeal to everybody in some sense that is a beer fan.
So do you find with that approach it's easier to find brewers because they respect the art, or is it harder
to find brewers?
Yeah,
I don't know. We haven't really found any.
Okay.
And what I mean is,
I know you haven't had a lot of turnover. But
no, Tim, who is our head brewer now, has been with us since the beginning.
Yeah.
And then Jared, who opened with us, who just left a couple months ago, was with us from the beginning. And then another guy that I actually had worked for me in Chicago named Vince is now a brewer at Great Divide.
Okay.
But no, we haven't really turned over anybody. In fact, the only guy that wasn't like new to this, because we all learned together. For the first three and a half years, I was back there with pretty much every batch. Pat, who is here, I think he's still here, but he came to us from Texas.
Long hair.
Yep.
Bushy mustache.
Yep. He ran the lab and yeast program for Independence Brewing in Austin.
Okay.
And was moving here and just happened. And I'm like, well, he's adding exactly the piece that we needed with that. We were learning it, but we knew that was kind of the next piece to the puzzle. And so he's really been good with that. And now we're working on trying to grow the company a little bit and get a little bigger. And, we will eventually have to hire some people for sure, but there's 8,000 ways to do this, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. But we certainly learn by trial and error.
We seem to go through these trends where we interview owners and brewers who are home brewers first, and then they start the brewery, or you get the business-minded people that start the brewery. And so I guess I understand kind of where you're coming from. I didn't mean to say there was a lot of turnover, but to come into this business and be able to challenge yourself in Denver and say that we're going to try this, and to have the success that you have, right? Even think about scaling,
Right.
is pretty impressive. What is the next step now?
Next step, honestly, we're overstretched.
Okay.
We're still on our original 7-barrel brew house, which you can see these tanks are a lot bigger than 7 barrels, which means we brew a lot. That's not very efficient. We also are still using a mobile canner. In fact, we're canning today.
Okay.
Also not efficient. So we have to get more efficient, meaning we got to produce beer more consistent, more efficiently for less money.
Can you buy bigger tanks? Or no, it's not.
We can, definitely. For us, the first step is a canning line. In fact, that's what I was on the phone about. But so we can package when we want, what we want. Right now, I have to schedule that out 5-6 weeks, and then have the beer ready, which makes it very hard. And then the next step from there is just a bigger brewing system, a bigger brew house, so we can produce, instead of 7 barrels a batch, 15, 20, 30 barrels a batch. So then same labor, but more automated, so more consistent, and that's kind of the next step for us.
So is that here? Are you putting canning line in here? Or
We have room. I actually have the next unit in this building too.
Nice.
So we have plenty of square footage.
Congrats
Infrastructure we
for
have to work
that.
on.
Wow.
Yeah, that was part of the reason we're here. People thought we were crazy building tucked away like this.
Now you look like a genius.
Yeah, I was going to say the forethought that's gone into this is amazing.
Well, and I honestly, the 2 breweries I looked at, and it's funny because now they're both owned by the same people, as kind of a blueprint was founders out of Michigan, without any of the HR issues, and Avery. If you remember the old Avery location, it was tucked away in an industrial strip mall, and they were pumping beer over 2 other businesses to package it. But
I didn't know that story.
yeah, they
That's
just
amazing.
grew, and there was a couple of businesses in the middle that didn't move, and so they had to pipe the beer over. So that was kind of how and the other thing I liked about those 2 breweries is I feel like, one, overall they're very well respected for what they do, and 2, their everyday lineups are really good, and their kind of reserved small batch stuff is also really good. And there's nothing wrong with it, but I did not want to be a niche. I did not want to be, we only do sours, or we only do this, or we only do that. And it's just, I like the challenge of coming up with different things, and we still are very style driven too. So
It's a pretty diverse menu, though, looking at it. I mean, you've got a little bit of everything, and the thing that I don't want to say attracts me, but draws my eye in at least is there's a lot of Rocky Mountain Alpine-inspired names here, which really I think resonates, especially with the build-out on your space too. So
one of the things coming out of where I got a really kind of good exposure to branding, and I wanted it to be. I knew in time we needed to be a very consistent brand. And to be honest, in our first couple of years, we got away from it a little bit, and we had to kind of retool it and not change the brand, just get back to it. We changed all our labels back to all of them are now Colorado photos, and hopefully very soon they're all going to be taken in-house. We have 2 amazing guys on staff that are phenomenal photographers, and I want them to be, I want there to be a story behind what's on every label we produce. And it's also, it's the reason we're here. We're in this amazing place with unrivaled opportunities and beauty and nature, and so many. You could spend a lifetime just seeing all the things to see in this state, so we wanted to showcase that. That's kind of what we did. On a business side, too, you want to start locking down a few names, too.
Do you think that I guess you can throw the humility out the window? That perspective has prepared you for this next phase of Colorado craft beer in ways that maybe some others aren't?
I hope so.
Okay.
You know, we've seen our distribution growth to the point where we're kind of stymied in that we just can't produce it fast enough.
There are worse problems to have.
There is, but it's, you know, and you still got to solve it.
Yeah.
You know, and unfortunately everything goes up in cost, and equipment's expensive, and ingredients and hops, and, you know, the whole 9 yards. And there's just so much, you know, now my job is more about running a business than brewing beer. I still write a lot of the recipes and concepts, but now it's a collaborative effort, which I really like. But yeah, I hope it can translate. You know, one of the things we want to do is put a variety of beers in cans more than we do now. We do about 5 now. And that's where having our own line, so the beer can be canned as as it's ready, as opposed to we have to plan for it and plan around it. Makes it pretty difficult.
Yeah, you can do a little bit more experimentation. You can do some barrel-aged stouts. There's just different things you can do when you have it on premise.
And we make them, but we just can't package them.
Yeah.
You know, and that's where we want to be able. And we just want to put more package out there so we can expand our footprint a little bit more in the market.
So we talked about obviously the background and everything, but the question that we'd like to go to is, what was the first beer? Like, I understand what you said, about, seeing New Belgium expand to Chicago and everything, but what was the beer that changed everything for you in terms of, I know what kind of beer they offered in Iowa not that long ago. And,
it was pretty light. Keystone was the standard in college. I remember that. I would say when I started working, in the retail side, actually I'll go back, and this will date me a little bit, but I was running a bar for Maggiano's Little Italy in Chicago, and I took over the bar program for them, and I wanted to put this brand new beer called Blue Moon on tap. And the GM was like, no way. It's a fad. No, put Amstel Light on. I said, Amstel Light's a bottled beer. We sold it in banquets. I'm like, I'll tell you what, I'll cut out one of our Miller Lite taps and we'll put them both on. I will say we never even finished the keg of Amstel.
I bet, yeah.
But the Blue Moon, the kitchen wondered why their oranges went. And it wasn't so much that beer, but it just kind of, that was the beginning where I really remember the change. We had Goose Island Honker's Ale on, but probably the beer I remember the most was Hop and Frog Brewery out of Ohio. Their beers came in, and it was Mean Manalishi Double IPA and Boris the Crusher.
Those are good names.
Yeah, they are.
Wow.
Boris stands for Bodacious Oatmeal Russian Imperial Stout.
Oh, that's good stuff there.
Yeah, and I've met the guy who started it, Fred, but we got those beers in, and I took a bottle each home, and I drank them both, and they were bombers, and they were big. It was a rough morning the next day, but they were just so flavorful and so intense, and there was so much to them. And that was kind of when homebrewing was also starting to come on as a not new thing, but gaining popularity. And so I started homebrewing shortly after that too, and that was kind of the combination
doing that
of
together.
those things. But those two beers always stick in my mind.
Are you in a hurry, by the way?
Nope.
Should we go?
Nope, I'm good.
I want to continue to pick his brain, knowing your background.
Sure.
You look like you need another beer, though.
Yeah, I'll get one. What's going on with the non-alcoholic stuff as an industry expert? You think, is that a fad, or is that going to last?
Non-alcoholic, it's always been there, I think. And the one thing that has always been the case, non-alcoholic beer has always been by far the best non-alcoholic option. It's better than NA wine or anything. I mean, I don't think it's going to take over anything. I just think it's going to, I think seltzers are the same way. They're going to just be a portion. I don't know if they're here to stay or not.
Do you think people are going to continue to expect more out of their NA beers moving forward? I mean, I saw a commercial for Heineken the other day, which blew my mind. I think they've always done an NA, frankly, but the fact that they're kind of heavily advertising it again and making the point that, have a couple and drive and you'll be okay. But is there a place for a craft establishment like Living the Dream or a Founders or somebody else to come in and fill an NA beer hole, that you create a good quality craft beer with low to no alcohol?
I think the technology isn't there yet for like breweries of our size.
Okay.
I think it's fairly in depth. And
I just thought it was a big strainer.
Yeah.
That's not what it is?
Really fine.
Yeah. Unfortunately, you lose everything else.
Yeah. It's just clear bubbles.
There are a few craft NA breweries that have popped up, and I don't know. I'll be honest, we've never been asked for one that I know of. And a couple of those breweries have approached us about, hey, do you want to sell this in the tap room? We do sell kombucha on tap, and that does fairly well. It's kind of our alternative, and we do some sodas and stuff. But hard to say. I think it's going to take. It's a little bit like the gluten-free. Those are getting better. They're still not. To me, you just can't get the body and stuff you can. You're just not going to get out of rice or sorghum or. We gluten reduce most of our beers. We don't really advertise it because you're always leery. You don't want to make false promises, but we do it. Basically, any beer that's not hazy or cloudy is gluten reduced here, and we've had people appreciate that for sure. But I don't know. What I haven't seen is like anytime there's a new fad, equipment companies will come out with something to deal with it. Whether it's a hop cannon or some kind of filtration or something, and there hasn't been anything. They haven't figured out a way to do that reasonably that I've seen. So I think that'll, and I'm not sure these bigger breweries like Heineken, they're losing market share. So a lot of it, I think, is just looking for another avenue to try to gain some shares. So
what has shocked you the most since going on this experiment and having a lot of success? What's been the biggest shock in the last 5 years?
I'll give you two. One positive, just the response we got opening our doors was amazing and humbling. And we opened on a Saturday in 2014 at 2:00, and by 2:30 there was like 40 people in line to get a beer. And you just don't expect that, especially after 6 months of just blood, sweat, and tears. To get the place open, and we did a lot of the work ourselves. I designed most of it, and had a lot of volunteer help, which was also amazing. It just kind of boom, you're going. And you don't really have time to even. But on the other hand, too, I never expected the industry to go in some of the directions with the pastry stouts and the.
Twice in 2 days.
Yeah, I just never saw that coming, and it's fine. I got nothing against it. It's not what I want to do. I'm a little more traditionalist when it comes. We'll get a little creative, but usually it's based on something. There's a reasoning behind it, and also the sheer growth across the country has been amazing. When I left Chicago, there was probably a dozen craft breweries. Now there's more than Denver. Yeah, not a lot more population, but still,
it's big, much bigger. Well, what's going on down here? If we release this first of the year-ish that you want to advertise, what should we be looking for?
I would say you're going to see a lot more of our stuff out there and different beers released in retail and packaging. You're going to see, we're working on a pretty cool big barbecue fest fundraiser in the spring we're working with. In fact, we're working with Keith is out there tonight with Woodhill, trying to do some good for the community. Hopefully you just see more of it. That's really what I'm hoping for this year.
What about, we didn't really talk about this with your distribution, but are we going to be able to find you, or are we already able to find you on tap handles in local bars as well?
Yep.
Okay.
Honestly, on-premise tap handles in bars and restaurants sometimes is harder than retail, even though there's a lot more beers in retail. A bar may only have 6-8 taps, and a lot of that's timing. You got to get there at the right time. There's a couple restaurants around it. It took us 6 months to get into. Usually when we get in, we stay because we tend, especially locally, sell well. But we're in about, I don't know the number exactly on OnPremise because it does rotate a little, but yeah, you'll find us around for sure.
So we should be keeping an eye out for your Living the Dream Sports Authority field at Mile High Stadium. Right. Labels both over the bar at your favorite watering hole or in the liquor store or grocery store. Are you in grocery as well?
We are not in grocery.
Just traditional liquor. Okay,
yeah.
Cool. Sticking to the corporate grocery stores.
Yeah.
Maybe not intentionally, I don't know, but...
some of it's just having enough beer.
Sure.
Some of it, we want to make sure we don't want to do anything to harm the customers that are doing well for us. But at the end of the day, though, it is business.
It is. Well, Jason, thank you so much, sir. We'll do a cheers. We'll close it up because who knows if the audio is going to be any good on this.
Cheers. Yeah.
Thanks,
we can always come back and do it again.
I'll do this.